Welcome to Life Stories. Today, we bring you a tale of transformation, courage, and self-discovery. It's the story of a woman who spent decades living in the shadows of others, dedicating her life to family and sacrifice. But one day, everything changed. After uncovering a painful truth about her husband and realizing how much of herself she had lost, she decided to reclaim her life. This is a story of letting go of the past, finding independence, and embracing a new future. Join us as we follow her incredible journey of change. Subscribe to the channel to begin today's story. I had spent the better part of my life trying to fulfill the duties I thought were expected of me. From the moment I married Richard, it seemed that my role was carved in stone: to serve, to care, and to love unconditionally. We built a life together, a family, a home. I had always been proud of the sacrifices I made, the meals I cooked, the children I raised. I thought that was what love was, giving everything without expecting anything in return. I was 65 when I decided to take the first step towards something for myself. I enrolled in an oil painting class at a lifelong learning institute. For years, I had put aside my dreams, my desires, believing that this was the only way to honor the life I had chosen. But I had recently found a small sliver of time that was entirely my own. Now that my son had his own family, maybe, just maybe, I could discover a passion of my own, something to share with Richard. Perhaps, something that could breathe life into the years that had already passed. On the first day of class, I met her, Grace. She was older, but there was something about her that made her seem timeless. A quiet elegance that radiated from her like light. Her silver hair shone with a grace that time had been kind to. Her posture poised, and her smile gentle. She introduced herself as a fellow student in the painting class, her presence so warm and inviting that I couldn't help but feel drawn to her. Maybe, deep down, I was longing for a life like hers, one where age seemed to have no power, where everything was effortless and beautiful. We spent the entire day together, and it was pleasant. She had this natural charm, an openness that made it impossible not to like her. By evening, as we stood outside the campus gates, she turned to me and asked if I wanted to grab a bite to eat or maybe go for a spa session. I quickly shook my head, feeling an overwhelming sense of inferiority wash over me. I still have to get home and make dinner for my family, I replied, my voice faltering. The moment the words left my mouth, I felt like a fool. The weight of my responsibilities, the years of putting everyone else before myself, had always left me with little time for anything else. I turned away from her, clutching my worn bag as I hurried off, my body trembling with the tears I had been holding back. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I had seen Grace before, just a week earlier. When I first visited the institute, she had handed in an assignment to the painting instructor, introducing it as a piece painted by her longtime boyfriend. It was a stunning work of art, so beautifully executed that the instructor showcased it to the entire class. And from the other side of the glass window, I recognized it immediately, that unmistakable style, that passion in every brushstroke. It was Richard's work, one of his most cherished pieces. A piece he had never shown to anyone. The realization hit me like a tidal wave, and I couldn't breathe. For over 30 years, Richard and I had built a life together. A life I believed was founded on trust and love. And yet, here I was, confronted with a truth so cruel, so undeniable. Richard, the man I had dedicated my life to, had been living a secret life with Grace for all these years. The man who had shared a bed with me for decades, who had built this family, had quietly nurtured a love with her, a love that had never been shared with me. As the class's applause echoed in my mind, I could hear Grace's voice recounting her love story with Richard, a love that had lasted over 30 years. The sharp sting of jealousy, betrayal, and confusion twisted in my chest. For all these years, I had been living a lie. And the woman who stood before me, so poised and graceful, had been there all along, sharing Richard's love, while I had stayed in the background, tending to the mundane details of life. The weight of that knowledge crushed me. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I had to know more. I had to confront this woman who had unknowingly shaken the very foundation of my existence. And so, I returned to the class the next day, sitting next to Grace, unable to take my eyes off her. But as I spent more time with her, as I studied the woman who had shared Richard's heart for so long, something inside me broke. The weight of the years I had spent living for others, of the love I had given without ever receiving it in return, was unbearable. It was in that moment, as I watched her move with such grace, that I realized I could not go on living like this. I could not keep pretending that everything was fine when my heart was shattered. I had given up everything for this man, for this family, and now I was left with nothing but the remnants of a life I no longer recognized. The moment I returned home, the weight of what I had discovered sank deeper into my bones. I found Richard in his studio. As usual, his brushes and paints scattered around, his focus consumed by yet another piece of art. He didn't even look up when I entered, his voice cold as he called from behind the closed door. "You're late. Get dinner started. Joseph will be home soon." I stood there in the living room, frozen for a moment. The paintings on the walls surrounded me. Portraits of our children, family gatherings, and landscapes Richard had created over the years. But as I looked closer, a horrible realization washed over me. There wasn't a single portrait of me. Not one painting that reflected the woman who had supported him, who had spent decades in the shadows of his success. My hands, once soft and delicate, now rough and calloused, clenched into fists. The resentment I had buried for years finally clawed its way to the surface. "Why?" The word escaped my lips. Barely a whisper. It was the question that had been haunting me. The question I had never dared ask. Why had I spent all these years as a background character in his life? Sacrificing my own needs, my own dreams, for a man who barely acknowledged me? Richard's voice broke through my thoughts. Impatient as always. "What are you standing there for? Dinner isn't going to make itself. Joseph's coming home. Do I need to remind you?" The sound of his dismissive tone was like a slap across my face. I stared at him through the crack in the studio door, watching as he continued to paint, his eyes absorbed in the canvas. It was as if I wasn't even there, as if I had no place in his world anymore. And in that moment, something in me snapped. "Paint," I said, my voice trembling with a fury I had never allowed myself to feel. "You come home every day, and you lock yourself in this isolated studio. Is this house only mine? Are these children only my responsibility?" I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, my breath shallow and fast. Years of quiet resentment, of feeling invisible and unimportant, came rushing to the surface. "You're retired now, Professor Harrington. What the hell are you still painting so obsessively every day?" Richard stopped. His brush hung suspended in mid-air. His expression caught somewhere between surprise and annoyance. He set it down with a huff, irritated by my outburst. "There's nothing to discuss with someone like you. Art is a lifelong pursuit. It demands dedication. But what would you know about that?" The words stung. I had spent my entire life caring for this family, for him. Yet here I was, reduced to a mere housewife in his eyes. A second thought, a distraction from the true meaning of life, which for him was captured in every brushstroke, in every canvas he created. I stormed into his studio, unable to contain my anger anymore. "Tell me then, Professor," I shouted, pointing at the paintings on the wall. "You've dedicated decades to painting, capturing everyone around you. So why is there not a single portrait of me?" Richard's expression faltered, but only for a second. He took a step back, as if my presence was an inconvenience. "Stop making a scene, Jane. Stay out of my studio. You're just a housewife. Focus on your responsibilities. Why would I paint you? What's the point? Don't make a fool of yourself." His words were like a knife to my heart. "Why?" I asked again, louder this time, the pain in my voice raw and unfiltered. "Why did I spend my life taking care of this home, raising your children, making sacrifices for you, just to be looked at with contempt? Richard exhaled sharply, his frustration spilling over. You're making a scene for nothing. Stop being so dramatic. I could feel the weight of all the years I had spent blindly devoted to him. All the years I had denied my own happiness to make sure he had everything he wanted. And in return, I was nothing but a servant in his eyes. Someone who had become invisible to him. A housewife. No more, no less. I wasn't ready for the words that followed. The questions that tumbled out of my mouth. As if they had been waiting for years to be said. Is painting grace the only thing that isn't shallow? The only thing that isn't disgraceful? I asked, my voice shaking with the force of the truth I had just uncovered. Richard's expression froze, his eyes locking with mine for the first time in what felt like an eternity. For a moment, I thought he would confess. Would finally admit the truth of his affair with Grace. But instead, his face twisted with anger. His gaze hardening. Don't you dare, he snarled, his voice low and shaking with barely contained rage. I don't care what kind of tantrum you throw. But do not under any circumstances disrupt Grace's life. The words hung in the air. A final, undeniable truth. Richard wasn't just defending an affair that had been going on for decades. He was protecting it, as if Grace meant more to him than the life we had built together. And in that moment, I knew, this wasn't just about a painting. This was about the life I had lived in the shadow of a man who had never truly seen me. I stood there, my heart heavy, as the realization washed over me. I wasn't his wife anymore. I was a stranger, someone who had been discarded. But I wasn't going to stay silent any longer. The days that followed felt like a blur. I had left the house. Left Richard. Left everything I had known for the past 4 decades. It was as if I had stepped into a new life. A life I had never given myself the permission to live before. The weight of the years I had spent being invisible, being just a caretaker and nothing more, seemed to lift off my shoulders with every passing day. I found myself in a small apartment. One I had purchased years ago as an investment before I married Richard. The space was bare and lonely at first. But as I began to clean it, to make it my own, I started to feel something I hadn't in years, a sense of independence. The years of sacrifice and toil in the service of others had left me with no time for myself. But now, for the first time, I was living on my own terms. I began to focus on the things I had always put off, things I had once thought were unimportant. Selfish even. I enrolled in a private flight school. And when I walked into that room, filling out the forms and passing the medical exam, I could feel the weight of my past slipping further away. The staff looked at me with surprise, disbelief that someone my age could be pursuing such a dream. But I didn't care. I wasn't doing this for anyone else. I was doing it for me. I also signed up for a beauty treatment package at a high-end clinic. The years of caring for my family had left me feeling worn, tired, and invisible. But as I lay back in that chair, feeling the rejuvenating effects of the treatments, I realized something. I had denied myself the pleasures of life for far too long. I had always focused on the needs of others, putting myself last. Now, I was doing something just for me. Without guilt, without hesitation. In addition to that, I took up floral arrangement and tea ceremony classes. These were things I had always wanted to do but had never had the time or energy for. The excitement of learning something new, of rediscovering parts of myself that had been lost for so long, was exhilarating. I was becoming someone I had forgotten I could be: strong, independent, and free. I stopped answering Richard's calls. I stopped responding to his messages. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to fix things for him, or for anyone else. I was living for me. I even began to enjoy the solitude. It was refreshing, a space where I could finally breathe without the weight of others' expectations pressing down on me. But even as I was building this new life for myself, the world around me began to change. Richard tried to contact me often, desperate for reconciliation. He even showed up at my apartment a few times. But I had informed the security not to let him in. He was a man who had never truly seen me. And now, after all these years, He thought I would just accept his apologies and come back. But I wasn't the same woman anymore. I kept myself busy, filling my days with new activities, new experiences. The freedom I felt was intoxicating. I began to lose weight, feeling healthier and more vibrant than I had in years. I was learning, growing, and most importantly, I was learning to live for myself. Richard and my son, Juan, were growing more frustrated by my refusal to return. They accused me of being selfish, of throwing away everything we had built. But in my heart, I knew it wasn't selfishness. It was self-preservation. I had spent my life giving. And now it was time to take something back. It was time to reclaim who I was. To stop being defined by the roles they had forced upon me. And then, one day, I found myself in front of the airport, ready to board a plane to a new adventure. I wasn't just escaping my old life. I was embracing my new self. This was my moment to soar. The doors of the airplane opened, and I stepped inside, heart racing with excitement, eager to fly higher than I ever had before. This was no longer about running away from my. As the plane lifted off the ground, I felt a surge of freedom unlike anything I had ever known. The wind rushed past the windows, and the world below seemed so small, so distant. For the first time in years, I wasn't tethered to anyone or anything. I was in control of my own life, soaring above the constraints that had bound me for so long. I looked out over the vast blue sky, the same sky that had always been above me, but never truly within my reach until now. The years of sacrifice, the years spent living in the shadows of others, had faded into the distance. I had let go of the bitterness, the resentment. It no longer mattered what Richard or anyone else thought of me. I was free. The journey ahead was uncertain. But for the first time, I didn't fear the unknown. I embraced it, knowing that whatever came next, it was mine to create. The path I had been walking was no longer the only one. I had the power to choose, to decide how I would live the rest of my years. As the plane continued to climb, I whispered a quiet thank you to the woman I had once been. The one who had been so devoted to others. But now, I was a new person. One who had learned to live for herself. And I knew that the best was yet to come. If you've enjoyed my story, please subscribe to the channel to stay updated on new videos from Life Stories. I hope that by sharing my journey, I can inspire others to find the courage to live their own lives fully and authentically. Thank you for being part of this story.